Good morning from Canada. This is the Little Book Room. 5 years approximately after the first video. We are running out of space. This was a COVID project and there were hours spent hand painting, hand stitching, just creating a space, an empty space, using discarded items, junk that was turned into art. So this is a quick tour. This wall picture ornament was created out of an antique abandoned window frame that served as a frame for this hand-stitched hanging. The inspiration for it was an old Christmas card, bits of abandoned fabric. I've named it the Little Lake by the church. You can see the dog here and the snowman and the little lake. This is a 1950s dollhouse. Marx Brothers. There's a little furniture in it. And I've amassed a fairly wide collection of 50s and 60s vintage wooden Fisher-Price toys. A little peek inside the dollhouse. These Fisher-Price music boxes and toys. I'm trying to make this a quick overview of the book room and not talk too much and not make it too long, upon the request of a friend. Old dollhouses serve beautifully as bookshelves. Here we have the story of Hansel and Gretel, Little Red Riding Hood, and Puss in Boots. The books in this section, some of them are about 120 years old, children's books. I have to make a separate video featuring the books. They are just gorgeous. The frontispieces, the illustrations, and these children's books weigh, some of them are about 5 pounds each, which meant that a child would have had to sit upright at table and very cautiously and gently handle the books. The script, the print is also very, very small and tiring on the eyes. This wall hanging is also hand-stitched. I call it Adventures in Bookland, and I created this. I was looking for something to embody my concept of what the Little Book Room library was supposed to be. This is my latest acquisition, an entire hardcover set of the Narnia Chronicles. I reread the first 5 during a recent time away and really cried. It's funny when you read things from an adult's perspective, it gives you something different. This is an old storage chest. I added the wheels onto it and decoupaged it red to match the rest of the room with red tissue paper. And inside, it's stuffed to the brim with old dolls. That's another collection of mine. I'll have to do a separate video on the dolls. These Fisher-Price dollhouses from the 70s. There's actually little furniture in them, and the featured and the unique, distinct Fisher-Price little people. These little people. This is a minivan and a fire truck. This is another little dollhouse that houses Dr. Seuss very early editions, some of them first editions, many of them banned, so they are worth a lot now. This is my A.A. Milne and Winnie the Pooh collection. And here we have the Rupert the Bear collection I think the oldest one I have is from 1958. Thank you to my friend Shami, who requested an updated video, and I thought I would do it on this New Year's Eve. This was an old dollhouse created by a dad in the 1970s, I think. You can see the shag carpeting in the rooms, and the distinctive 1970s wallpaper. The roof was shingled. The dollhouse was incomplete, so it has come with the instructions that the daddy had pulled out of a women's magazine, I think. And I had so much fun looking for, over a period of a couple of years, looking in thrift stores and odd places, garage sales, for furniture to furnish the dollhouse. This was an old high chair, abandoned. It was covered with 50 years of pasta sauce, I think, but it turned out to be beautiful after I'd scrubbed it clean. And these dolls are wearing the clothes that were made, knitted for my children. This is the Bible section. There's some really beautiful Bible storybooks from the 1800s. As I said, I'm going to have to create a different video featuring these books as they open and going through the pages. This is an old 1960s doll crib that I painted, and it's storage for all the extra stuff, the old toys and extra books. This is a little hand cart that some daddy would have taken his children to school in. This is the Raggedy Ann section. Some of them are first editions. This Raggedy Ann was in a terrible state when I found her. The power of bleach is amazing. You just dip discolored, ugly, yellowed, white stuff into bleach, and it comes out perfectly white, startling white. And this is an old Fisher-Price record player. Another little dollhouse to house the little mini books. This I've amassed since the last video a whole bunch of vintage Fisher-Price toys with the little people, some of the vehicles. That's a Fisher-Price entire town. But it's getting so crowded now that even to take them out, to look at them and handle them is a nuisance. Vintage Heidi books, some of them, I think one of them goes back to the late 1800s. This is the Pollyanna series. I discovered this author, Mrs. Mead, from the late 1800s. I've read one or two of the books. It's amazing how human behavior, culture, what's acceptable, everything is reflected in literature. This is Nancy Drew. The earliest editions are from the 1930s, and when they come with the dust jackets, they are very, very valuable. I've got several of them. I've got a couple of first editions as well. There's Hardy Boys, little pixie books here. They're adorable. The earliest I have, I think they're from the 1930s. These are the Bobbsey twins. The earliest editions are from the 1920s. These are the Bobbsey twins from the 1920s, and they're terribly, terribly politically incorrect. But one cannot cancel literature. One cannot recreate history, and that's all part of history, isn't it? Bobbsey twins were published till the 1980s, from the 1960s to the 1980s, and one can see how culture changes and how everything has been changed accordingly. This doll, I created the outfit for it out of an old satin gift bag. I have it on its side because it really is quite creepy. But just the primitiveness of this rubber doll made me want to acquire it. Creepy. The eyes are creepy, or my daughters think so. These two sets of shelves leaning against the walls are old pantry doors that were discarded after renovations. These are little golden books, some of them going back. I think the first golden books were published in the 1940s, post-war. So some of them, the illustrations are lovely, very valuable. This is the French section. And here I have children's classics and vintage ladybird books, which are also becoming collector's items. I have far too many dolls. Not that I'm particularly a doll lover, but they are beautiful, and it's part of the evolution of dolls, and I've just started collecting them. This is a beautiful picture of a beautiful plate of a grandpa reading to his granddaughter, and more French books. Fisher Price. These are really adorable to play with. Ferris wheel. This is a set of children's encyclopedias from the 1950s. Enid Blyton was one of the editors, so I had to acquire it. This one book is mine. I had it as a child. I learned to read from it as a child. I remember lying down on the bed with my mother, and I was amazed to find the identical book in a junk store. So the one on the left with the same title. In fact, the one with the grey title, it was spineless. So I photocopied the missing pages from the book I found and created a replica. And they're sitting side by side on the shelf. And I love this space. It's my quiet space, my happy space. Here I have the entire, probably almost every book that was written by Louisa May Alcott, the author of the Little Women series. I've got all the books, all different editions. There is one very old edition, one of probably her earliest books, the Spinning Wheel stories, short stories that were written for her mom. This one is from the late 1800s. I think I just lucked out. Then Edward Alger, I still haven't read too many books. I think there were stories for boys, but I've got a bit of a collection. Even if I don't think the rest of my life will be enough to sit down and reread all these books. Angela Brazil, schoolgirl books, school stories from my mother's time, or maybe a little before, and she was considered revolutionary in her time. And I think, I'm not sure if her books were banned at the time or inadvisable at the time, but I remember reading some of my, one or two that had belonged to my mother, and I wish I knew what happened to them. These are very early editions of L.M. Montgomery, the Anne of Green Gables author. I probably have some first editions of her books. And believe me, as far as I am concerned, if I was going to read the same title and there was a choice of paperback published, say, 2-3 years ago, and vintage hardcover, there is definitely a different feel to the vintage hardcover. A different sense of enchantment. And this is another author, an American author that I very recently discovered, having come from with very colonial British tastes in literature. This one is Jane Stratton Porter. Freckles. Freckles was an adorable book. Freckles Comes Home was written a sequel by her daughter. I loved The Girl of the Limberlost, the descriptions of nature in the swamplands of Florida, I believe. Hopefully I haven't offended anybody by getting it wrong. And Michael O'Halloran, that was also very, very touching. Mind you, these things have to be read in the context of the time. A Little Princess, I just reread that, a 1920s edition. Exquisite illustrations. And yes, so I have restored these books. They have been cleaned of mold page by page with rubbing alcohol, repaired, vacuumed to clear them of dust and mold, and they look brand new. This is another Fisher-Price school bus from a very early one, probably late 1950s. This is a little stool that I use as a climbing ladder in a terrible state, found in a terrible state, had been used as a bathroom stool, I think, for a child, to step up to the wash basin. This is a 1950s glamour doll, very beautifully done. So when I find the dolls, I shampoo the hair, I scrub them clean, I disinfect them very carefully, and clean out the clothes, wash them. Some of them have to be hand washed very, very gently because they could fall apart. They're so old. This is another series called Ruth Fielding from the early 1900s. It's amazing, even reading Nancy Drew books, early editions and up to the present, you see the evolution of women and women's rights and women's thinking and also the evolution of men, I guess, as regards to their attitude towards women and the world. And this is the Cherry Aim series. I remember reading that series from, borrowed them from my cousins, my older cousins. What do we have here? This is another Fisher-Price. We have some annuals, some old golden press encyclopedias and atlases, these little suitcases. The brown wooden chest is a doll cupboard, and these boxes, the pink one and the pink edged one and the one on top, are home. They're doll cupboards to some exquisite dolls with their entire wardrobe of clothing from the 1930s and 40s. I grew up reading the Abbey School books and the Katydids. As I said, these children's press, Dean and Company, Collins, they are valuable, and if they come with the dust jacket, they are doubly valuable. So I make sure to very carefully clean with rubbing alcohol the shred. Sometimes the jackets are in a very, very bad state, but once they've been gently taped together, cleaned, and a cellophane cover on them, they look new again and readable and handleable. I know there's one school of thought that books should not be repaired, that it decreases their value, but my thinking is, what's the point in having a book, no matter how old and valuable it is, if it cannot be read? And so if it's fragile, I will repair it as best as I can, and then I can enjoy a good read in bed. I do look forward to bedtime. These are some vintage blocks. The I Love Bears little carriage with wheels has all bear books, mostly Paddington Bear. And this is Trixie Belden, a series that's known in North America, not among the Brits and the colonies. There's a couple of Shel Silverstein books. And for ages, I was looking for a vintage hardcover copy of the Diary of Anne Frank, and didn't I bump into one recently? I was thrilled. I was absolutely thrilled. And this is my crowning collection. For those who are from a British colonial background, these are my vintage Enid Blytons. It's probably worth a lot. Happened upon them just in unusual places, several of them with dust jackets. So this is the Secret 7 series. Many of them, I suspect, are very early, if not first editions. Several of the Secret 7s have dust jackets, which increases the value. And this is the Enchanted Wood series. And here we have the famous 5. And those are the 5 Findouters and Dogs, the Mystery series. And here we have anyone who is Enid Blyton lover will be able to recognize the titles. I have several editions, multiple editions of some of the titles. So I'll slow down here. I've got almost the entire Noddy series, early to first editions, most of them with dust jackets. I really, the pandemic was put to good use. The lockdown was put to good use. Not the pandemic, the lockdown was put to good use, I think, as far as I was concerned. Kept me from going crazy and helped me to create this space that just makes me happy. Boxed sets are also sought after. These are more recent editions, but that's the Little House on the Prairie series. That is a Ramona series that my children loved and I remembered reading out to them. That's Mary Poppins, and I have a Judy Blume box set. Judy Blume is an North American author. And that, dear people, is the revised Little Book Room. If you compare to the initial one that was posted on Little Book Room Shoppe's Facebook page, you can see that the walls seem to have stretched. These two were two wall hangings that were created by my daughter's great-grandmother. I'm so glad I got her to sign it, hand-stitched, before she passed away. The writing has faded, but I think it says 1993. And yes, books do take us to the lands of dreams and help us to believe that nothing is impossible. Thank you for taking this little walk with me through the Little Book Room, which was the inspiration for the Little Book Room Shop. Until next time, this is Selena. Goodbye.